It's Nepo with the white pieces, and he opens with e4. Magnus goes for e5. We have knight to f3, knight to c6, and now d4. Nepo goes for the Scotch opening. We have e captures on d4. And now knight captures on d4. We have bishop to c5, so attacking this knight twice. Now people place something like bishop to e3 defending this knight. But now we have knight captures on c6. And now not recapturing with the b pawn but rather queen to f6, going for that Charlie White attack or the throbbing gambit as it's been called. So you can't really save the knight, otherwise you're getting checkmated. You have to play something here, and you could play something like queen to d2, or you could play queen to f3. Those are all very known moves, but Nepo goes for f4, and it's a move that he's been known to play, but it's a very rare move. So how will black continue? Well, obviously you have to capture back here, and it seems like a good idea to capture back with the queen so you don't mess up your pawn structure. But in this particular opening where this line is played, it's usually better to capture with the pawn. So here d captures on c6. This also allows our bishop to quickly enter the game if needed. Knight to c3, and now we have queen to h4 with check. Interestingly, knight to h6 is considered best here, and there is a game that Nepo played against Lazzaro Baptista Bruzone. But here Magnus goes queen to h4 check. So g3, Nepo blocks the attack. Queen back to e7, and now bishop to d3, and now knight to f6 by Magnus, putting more pressure on the e4 pawn. So queen e2, bishop to g4 attacking the queen, so queen has to move. Queen to g2, still keeping an eye on the e4 pawn, and now Magnus just castles queenside, and now you can see that black has a very nice development here. Both of these bishops are slicing through the entire board, and the rook is very nicely placed, and the other rook can easily come to e8. So what can you play here? Bishop to d2. Nepo needs to castle as quickly as possible, and now Magnus goes knight to d5, since the e-pawn cannot really capture the knight because of the pin, so h3. Nepo wants to get rid of this bishop from g4 so he can finally castle. Bishop back to e6, and now a3, so still waiting with that castle's move, and now Magnus plays bishop to d4. A very interesting option here was knight to e3. It look ugly, but for example bishop captures back and prevents the white king from castling, and if queen f3 attacking the bishop, you can just play bishop to d4, and if white castles, bishop captures the knight, you take back and queen takes a3 check, and everything falls apart here. But Magnus plays bishop to d4 right away. And, okay, you are putting a lot of pressure on the c3 square, and now Nepo just trades. We have knight captures, c captures back, and now we have castles on queenside. And now d captures on e4, bishop captures attacking this b7 pawn, and now c6, preventing this queen-bishop battery to be operating in full capacity. Rook h to e1, now putting a rook on a nice open file as the queen is still on e7. So after rook h to e1, queen goes to c7, and now f5, trying to get this bishop to a less active square. Bishop to d5 attacking the queen here, so queen to b6. Putting pressure on b2 pawn, and now you really want to capture here, so Nepo plays c3, so Magnus takes the bishop on e4. Queen captures on e4, and now bishop back to f6, and now the really interesting part comes. The f7 pawn is extremely weak here, and this is what Nepo goes for. He plays queen to c4, puts pressure on the f7 pawn, and Magnus trades once. We have rook captures and rook captures back, and now we have rook to f8. We have a4 by Nepo, and now we have h6 by Magnus, king to b1, and now queen to a5 going after this f5 pawn, g4 defending this. Magnus goes bishop to e5, offering a trade of bishop. Bishop back to e3, Nepo declines, and now a6, so just making some more room for the king. Bishop to c5, putting pressure on the rook here, and now rook to d8, offering a rook trade, so rook captures d8, queen captures back. And only now queen captures on f7. We have queen to d1 check by Magnus, and king goes to a2, and queen captures on a4 check. And now if you go back, we have a repetition here. So instead bishop back to a3 was played, and now bishop to f6. So now we have this position where the position is completely equal and the bishop are of the same color, so there's not a lot you can do about this position. So queen e6 check, king to b8, queen to d6 check, and of course king back to c8. We have queen e6 check and king b8, and it was in this position on move 36 that Nepo and Magnus agreed to a draw. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you and see you next time.